Welcome to Great Practice, Great Life by Atticus Incorporated. What if you could hang out with successful small and solo law firm attorneys, ask them about their successes and failures, their business strategies and mindset habits, then take an insight or two to guide your own growth in your practice? Each week, Steve Riley shares an in-depth look at how to work less while maintaining high client service standards, reduce your stress levels while growing your income, and find time to make changes when you are time-starved. Steve is a lawyer coach for more than 20 years and a former trial attorney. His goal is to provide strategies to help you balance your lives and grow your practice. Now, here's Steve.
Hi, welcome to this episode of Great Practice, Great Life. And I am here with a special guest, somebody that I've been a fan of, been listening to his podcast, been following his career, prolific author, prolific content creator, which we'll talk about later in the show. But more importantly, a man that lives his mission, and that is Dre Baldwin. Dre, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on, Steve. Excited to be here.
It's great to have you here, man. I'm very excited to have you here. You bring something to the party that is very, very difficult for a lot of people to appreciate. And you own a company called Work on Your Game. And before we get to explain that, I also want to thank you. You've committed to be a speaker at our summit this year. And you're going to talk about your new book, which is called The Third Day. So we're going to reference that when you get a chance, reference The Third Day and talk a little bit about it. But don't steal your thunder for the summit. I want to make sure that you knock it out of the park at the summit. That work for you?
That works. It's perfect.
Okay, so talk to me about the origin of Work on Your Game. What does that mean? What's it about? And how can you help my friends who are lawyers, team leaders, associates, people who are in the law firm space trying to have a great practice and great life? How can you help them?
Well, that'll encapsulate probably a bunch of questions all in one if I answer that question. So started with my background as an athlete. So my background is playing sports, played basketball professionally for 9 years. And at the same time I started playing pro, which was in 2005, to give everyone a timeline, I started publishing videos on this new website called YouTube. And it was brand new at that time. So that's where I started to build what we now call a personal brand on the internet. And it was probably about 4 or 5 years into that, I had this audience of just basketball players. So from 2005 to 2015, most of my content, 98% of it was on the basketball court showing players how to play. And I would start to get players just coming to me because they were spreading the word about me through word of mouth to each other. Hey, if you want to learn how to play basketball, go on YouTube and look up this guy, Dre Baldwin. So I would get all these comments often from players just asking, Dre, how do I get better? Can you give me some tips? Can you give me some advice? And one day I was in the 24-hour fitness gym in Cutler Bay, Miami, southern part of the city. And I had my camera with me. This is before we had cameras on our phones. So this is when you needed a phone and a camera. So I had my $100 camera with me, as I always did, just in case I came up with an idea to put on YouTube. And at the end of my workout, I was just thinking about the comments that I was continually getting, which is what I just told you. Give me some tips, some help, some advice. And I recorded this short 2-minute video. It's still on YouTube to this day, where I was saying to the players, hey, all of you are coming to YouTube and asking me for advice and help as to why you're not getting better, when what you all actually need to do is look at what I'm doing. I'm here in the gym. This is about 4 a.m. because this is a 24-hour fitness. So it's 4 a.m. I'm finishing a workout. So it's 4 a.m. I'm finishing a workout and you all are on YouTube watching me. So this is the reason why I'm getting good and you're not. So what all of you need to do is stop playing Xbox, stop standing outside in the corner, stop watching YouTube, even kill this video that you're watching and go work on your game. And I put some colorful language in that sentence, but they all got the point. And when I said that, many of them, they just loved that phrase. And I wasn't trying to create a catchphrase, Steve. I was just saying it. I was just talking. But so many people kept repeating that phrase back that probably about a year or so later, I realized, you know what, this phrase is perfect because it encapsulates everything that I'm about. And I also could see on the horizon, I wasn't always going to be the basketball guy. Eventually, the ball stops bouncing. But this phrase, work on your game, is not about basketball. It's just about work, whatever your game is. So that's when I kind of branded it, made a business out of it, and I started using it more intentionally. So that's where it came from. And what Work on Your Game is about is it takes all the mental tools that I had to develop and I had to use to make it as an athlete, things like discipline, confidence, mental toughness, personal initiative. And I started talking about those things more intentionally, not only how they applied on the court, but also how they applied off the court, because when I started talking to athletes about these mental pieces, and they started asking me about it at some point. I'm sure we'll get to that in this conversation. People who didn't play sports, Steve, started to hear my messages on YouTube. Because as I told you, 98% of my content was basketball related. But around 2010, I started talking about things like the mental aspect of sports, like how you need to be disciplined, show up to the gym every day and work out, and be confident during the game, and be mentally tough. You got cut from the high school team. Okay, I know it disappoints you, but take the energy of that disappointment, transmute it into some action so you can get better. So next year you don't get cut. And personal initiative, how to just go get started. Don't just sit around thinking about what to do, but actually go do it. So when I started talking about those things, I was speaking to the athletes, but I wasn't always using sports as a reference. I was just talking about the concept in and of itself. And people who didn't play sports, people like the audience of this show right here, they started finding my content on YouTube and saying, Dre, I don't even play basketball, but the stuff that you talk about, this applies off the court and in real life the same way it applies on the court. And it was a perfect segue, I guess you can say, between my basketball life and my post-basketball life, because I wasn't thinking about this at the time, Steve, but every basketball player eventually stops playing basketball. And a lot of the players who are following me on YouTube, they were not going to play in college, let alone play pro. Their careers were going to be ending sooner rather than later. And all of them go on and do other things in life. And a lot of those people are still in my audience to this very day. And they put the basketball down years ago. So it was a little bit serendipitous in that way. But also at the same time, I was knowing that eventually I'm not going to be the basketball guy. I knew I wasn't going to be a trainer or a coach after basketball. And I needed to know, what can I do to serve people and have value in the marketplace outside of being a guy who can run fast and jump high. So when people like yourself and people in your audience started to say, hey, this stuff applies off the court, I said, perfect. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the mental part of sports and I'm going to start applying it in everyday life for people who have never played a sport. And the fact that I can translate it from one area to the other is really my superpower, just my ability to break things down and explain them. So this is when I started to build up an audience of people who weren't athletes. And between 2010 and 2015, I stopped playing in 2015. I just started to get more of an entrepreneurial education. And that's when I started to learn more about business and what does it take to lead a business? What does it take to build a business? What are the strategies, the systems, all these pieces you need for a business to actually run on more of a technical side. And I was doing it more, in the personal branding, I guess what you call influencer space. But as I kept doing that, I would get a lot of people asking about that, because that became the next wave. Everyone was looking at the internet. Hey, I can build a business online with no money down. And I had already started doing it. So people started asking about that. And then as I continued to do that, people who did not play basketball and were not internet influencers, they were finding their way to me because I suppose they just liked the way I communicated. They liked the way that I got points across. And I think it was a different approach because I was bringing everything from the sports experience, but I was able to talk to someone who had never played a sport. So I think a lot of people who were not athletes really took to that. And that's where I started to build the business that I have today and build the audience that I have now, with a bunch of people who have never picked up a basketball, but they appreciate the fact that I did and that I can translate what works over there to what works in the suit and tie world, as we say. So that's how we got here.
That's fantastic. Now you've built, I think I'm in the third wave of your audience, people that were attracted to your message, attracted to the resilience, attracted to the accountability, attracted to just get up and work on your game, whatever that game may be. Let's for a minute, just do a little, we'll go down a rabbit hole for a little bit. Let's talk about how big your audience is so people can understand the reach of your message, so people can get a sense of that. Because you have a fairly large podcast audience and you also have a fairly large YouTube audience. And I've seen you on social media, you're not afraid to pick a fight with somebody. So that's always a source of entertainment for me. But talk about how big your audience is just for a moment.
Well, it started with YouTube. I'm on all the social medias these days, but it started with YouTube. And these days I have somewhere around 140,000 subscribers between multiple YouTube channels. And it's funny because around 2009, somebody from China, he was a fan of mine. He reached out to me because, in China, they don't have YouTube. They have different apps, similar, but it's not YouTube. And he spoke Mandarin. And he said, Dre, a lot of your videos are downloaded off YouTube and they're uploaded on the Chinese version of YouTube. And over there, I probably have 10 times as many people watching my stuff. Because you can go to the site and you type in Dre Baldwin, you still see my name, but you can't read anything else. You can't read the numbers. So who knows? Probably 10x that in China that we can't count because I don't speak Mandarin. And then between the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the TikToks, everything else, probably another 100 to 200,000 people. You don't always know. Numbers are always changing, and you get kicked off accounts, all hacked, all kinds of things happen. But probably somewhere close to 500,000 people have subscribed to or watched my stuff. Yeah.
That's fantastic. But you're also a prolific producer of content, which we'll talk about in a minute. So one of the things I'd like you to talk about, if you're up for it, is it seems like performance and coaching on peak performance and being resilient are two of your superpowers, I guess. Is that a fair statement, or would you categorize it differently?
Yeah, absolutely. Peak performance thing is a phrase that has gotten more and more popular. And I think it starts in the sports world because as an athlete, you have no choice but to perform at your peak when you're playing against other athletes who are also at their peak. So drawing that from the sports world and applying it to everyday life, absolutely. And then the other piece, you said the resilience. And yeah, that's a huge part because no matter how good you are, no matter how talented you are, how well you plan, something's not going to go right. And something's going to go against your plans. And you still have to figure out a way to keep going and become successful anyway. So, absolutely, that's a huge part of what I talk about almost every day.
What do you think the biggest challenge has been for you personally in developing resilience? As you look back over your career, both as an athlete and now as, I think, a coach, an entrepreneur, a writer, you've published 35 books now. What do you think your biggest challenge is for you personally for being resilient?
Biggest challenge for being resilient? It's a good question. I think the biggest challenge is really the foundation. It's what kind of hardware do you have laid down at the foundation of your mindset? That's what leads to how much resilience you have. Because as I said, everybody faces setbacks in life. Doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what your setup is, who your parents were. Everybody faces a setback. It's how you respond to the setback that determines where you end up. So I don't know when I can't even think of the first time I had to have resilience, but I mean, we've all had to have it at different times. But I think I was blessed to I come from a two-parent home, and my two parents were not entrepreneurs, not athletes. They did not teach me basketball. I pretty much taught that to myself. And they went to work every day at jobs that I know they weren't as excited to go to their work as you and I are excited to go to our work, Steve. And at the same time, they never preached about it. They never sat my sister and I down and said, "Hey, do you see what we're doing every day? When you grow up, you should do this." They never said that. They just showed up and went to work every day. And what I tell parents is that your kids don't do what you say, they do what you do. So when I got on the basketball court, I just took the same discipline that I saw in my parents and I applied it to the basketball court and it worked. And then since it worked in sports, I said, let me apply it to business. And that's how we got here. So I didn't quite answer your question where I first got resilience from, but I think it just comes from that's what was modeled to me to just show up every day and do your job. And it was never articulated. I just saw it. And I had no choice but to do the same thing because that's what was demonstrated.
Dre, you bring up an interesting conversation that you are modeling the resilience or the discipline that your parents had modeled for you. But you seem to have an above average level of resilience. I mean, I look at your career, I look at some of the things you did as an athlete, I look at some of the things you've done as an entrepreneur, and it doesn't seem to phase you when you get stuck. Well, it may phase you privately, but not publicly. And you seem to kind of keep going, keep going, keep going. And it's one of the things I really admire about you is that you are working on your own game, but you have an incredible work ethic and you have an incredible, seems to be an immunity to quitting. Or like, have you not gotten to a point where you're like, what am I doing? I've lost my mind here. You know, I should just
Yeah.
go get a normal job like other people. But you really have created some very powerful content, some very powerful messaging, and you seem to create and regenerate who you are as a human being on a fairly regular, consistent basis. There has to be something behind that. Like, was there a lesson that you said, okay, this was a lesson, like when you played ball in college or when you're in high school? Because I know you struggled. You weren't like a naturally, you were a gifted athlete, but you weren't where you want to be as a gifted athlete. You worked your butt off. And I think that's part of the what comes through. I'm not sure. I'm listening and I'm trying to get our audience to listen because you bring a particular approach to resilience that's to me unusual. Does that make sense to you? Do you understand what I'm asking you?
Yes, I do understand. I appreciate the compliment. I would say that one thing I say, especially when it comes to basketball, I was too stupid to quit because I tell people any logical, reasonable person would have looked at my situation in high school for when I only played 1 year and I sat the bench my senior year, the 1 year I made the team. And I sat the bench, most logical, reasonable people would have said, okay, you made the team. Congratulations. Now go do something serious with your life or after college, getting out of a Division III school. And Division III is the third tier of sports for those who are not athletes or don't follow sports. Most of your pros come from Division I, the guys on TV. Most people would have said, okay, you play college basketball. Most people don't do that. Right? You got an accomplishment. Now, what are you going to do with this? You got a degree, you go do something with it, was pretty much what my parents said. And again, I was too dumb to give up on it. And I just kept trying and kept working on it. And one thing that I tell people, Steve, is that it's not like I had some guarantee from the universe that it was going to work out. And what I tell people is that
no. If
right.
anything, you were getting direct reports from the universe that this is not going to work out.
Yes,
And
exactly.
you got direct reports from, coaches, direct feedback of people saying that you shouldn't be doing what you're doing and you shouldn't be performing at this level, but you didn't take the hint.
That's correct.
Yeah, you didn't take the hint.
So,
Like
well,
a normal, reasonable person would say, okay, there has to be some type of criteria you have for quitting at some point. Like, okay, this is stupid. I need to quit.
yes,
But
I do have one, as a matter of fact, now that you bring
what's
it up.
that?
So I got to remember what the points are. I got an episode on this. This is probably before you heard of me, maybe somewhere in the thousands. It was number one, can you still see the vision? So if you can't still see yourself being successful at that thing, then that's one number in the combination. So like a combination lot. So you need all three. Number one, can you no longer see the vision? Nobody's home up there when it comes to still being successful at that thing. Number two, are you still excited on the challenging days to come back the next day? So even though you had a terrible practice today, are you looking forward to the next training session? And the third one, I got to remember what it was. I'm not sure I remember it. I got to recheck my own content of what the third one was. But what I tell people is in basketball, Steve, when I kept getting cut from the high school team, after the third time, I said, well, maybe it's time for me to give up basketball, logically. But when I was trying to recreate in my mind, who am I going to be since I'm not going to be a basketball player, the vision kept coming back to basketball. And that didn't make sense to me. Why does it keep coming back to basketball when clearly reality is telling me basketball is not going to work? So then I went and played on a local team, like at my local rec center that year, my junior year of high school. And I played pretty well on that team. And that kind of rekindled the flame. Then next year, I finally made the high school team, and the rest is history. The point being that the vision kept coming back to me subconsciously, even though I was trying to erase it. And that's one of the keys that you need when it comes to quit or don't quit.
It's interesting. So for you, the gut check is the vision. Like, is the vision still there? Is the hard work still look like worth the price to pay? And the third one we can't remember, but I think the first two are
Yeah, I
fantastic.
got to check it.
Yeah, but
And
that's fine. It's fine. You're prolific. So our paths are similar. I was nominated to be a McDonald's All-American in college, played Division III. But I went, and then you went a radically different path. In that when I was playing ball, it occurred to me as I was sitting the bench, I wasn't going to play for the Boston Celtics, and I needed to find a new path. And I totally quit. I quit playing ball as like play with friends and recreationally, but I just quit focusing on it. But there's something about you that I'm trying to understand, and I want our audience to listen to, because you bring a lesson there's a lesson that I want our lawyers and our team leaders to listen to, because sometimes they get direct reports from the universe that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. They shouldn't have their practice. They shouldn't have the relationships. They should give up. They should go get a job. They should go do certain things. What is it about you? What is it, the thing that you just said, I'm not going to take a hint from the universe. I'm going to keep going?
Happiness is decided by us. We have the power to control it, to have it, and to design it however we see fit.
It doesn't matter how strong you are, it's how synchronized you are that drives you forward.
The difference in AI is that it is a unique innovation in the world of communications.
I kept doing the same stupid things over and over and over, expecting a different response. That's the definition of insanity. You've got to figure out, what do you care about?
I came for the money, and I'm staying for the great life.
Passion, knowledge, and then monetization.
You don't get the culture that you want, you get the culture that you are.
Oh my God, Atticus was amazing. That's subliminal messaging.
The biggest improvement is just being way more present to my family.
The community is phenomenal.
I'm surrounded by exceptional legal professionals.
Atticus saved my life.
Building a perpetual law firm is not about building a law firm at all. It's about how you lead a great life.
Well, I think some of it is innate. Some of it is part of my wiring as a person. But explain it on a more logical level, it's the law of conservation of energy. It states energy is neither created nor destroyed, merely changes forms and it moves from one object to another. So, as an athlete, again, I also give credit to my parents in in our culture we call it home training that I had was I was able to transmute the energy of, and Napoleon Hill talks about this in Think and Grow Rich. He talks about how men tend to hit their success stride somewhere between the ages of 40 and 60 because they they are able to transmute what used to be sexual energy and they transmute that into career accomplishment. And transmutation simply means taking one energy and changing the form of that energy into something else. It still has all the potency, but instead of focusing on over here, you focus it over there. So as an athlete, I was able to take the disappointments of the setbacks, and instead of taking that, let's say, sadness or disappointment of not making the team or not having anybody call on my phone to play for the next team, I transmuted that sadness into anger, activation energy. But again, I was able to use that anger in a positive way. And that led to go make another basketball team, become a better athlete, make YouTube videos, write books, do TED Talks. And I was just able to transmute it into doing positive activities. But had I not had a solid foundation from the way I was brought up and what was modeled for me, I could have took that same energy and transmuted it into something very not positive and ended up in a very not bad spot. So luckily I had the right outlets, such as playing sports. And young men, we have a lot of energy. We have testosterone. We need somewhere to displace that energy. I got shown sports, so I was able to go do something positive with it. And on top of that, I will say, as a hat tip to you, you said when you were in college, you figured you weren't going to play for the Boston Celtics. I don't know what year this was you were in college, but I will say that in the era that I came up in, again, I started playing in 2005. So at this point, Steve, I could get on the internet and find opportunities that nobody was calling me for. Whereas in your day, I don't think the internet was available for you to go Google how do I go play overseas?
It wasn't.
Right.
It wasn't.
Right. So there's a little bit of information advantage that I had in my era. And it's the same thing that I say to a lot of people these days that on a different subject, talking about entrepreneurship. You can start a business these days with no money from your couch. Whereas my parents couldn't have done that. That opportunity did not exist. So it's not a parallel between what I ended up doing and what they ended up doing because I had different access to different tools. Had the internet not come along when it did, who knows what I would have done. Because it's not like my professional basketball career immediately took off, but I had the internet as an option. I had selling products online. I could do that. I could go find my next job through sending emails to people. In 1990, you couldn't have done that, right? So I had to take advantage of the tools that were available to me at the time. Now, had I been 30 years earlier, who knows what my life would have turned out to be. So in answering your question, when it comes to the resilience, it's a part of it is just something that's in me. It's being a competitor. It's competing not even against the people, but often competing against the circumstance and being able to transmute that energy again into positive activity and positive habits combined with the available resources such as the internet, such as putting yourself out there, self-publishing yourself generally in all these different spaces that, again, had I been 10 years older than I am, I would not have been able to do things the exact same way at the same time. So hopefully that sort of answers your question, I think.
I think you've answered it, and I'm going to feed back to you what I heard, and then we'll move on because people are probably saying, Riley, you've lost your mind. But inside resilience for you is a belief in the transmutation or transformation of the obstacle into an advantage. And you have a profound belief that you're going to work through whatever that thing is and come out on the other side stronger. And I'm thinking, and you're a very avid reader. When did you read Think and Grow Rich? What was the book that flipped your thinking? Because there's something in there. You have fantastic parents, no doubt. Like they've raised a remarkable man. But somewhere in there is a switch that flipped. Do you recall what that was? Was it a book? Was it a course? Was it a conversation? What was it?
That's a great question. I haven't been asked that one. What was it? I read Think and Grow Rich when I was in college, maybe 19 or 20 years of age. I got introduced to it because I responded to a bulletin board posting that ended up being a guy who was in network marketing. And he invited me to a couple meetings. And in the meetings, they were talking about, hey, if you get in this business, you got to do personal development. You can't build a business anymore and you build yourself. And when they said that, I said, that makes perfect sense. Why aren't they telling me this in college? I have a 4-year college degree. They weren't telling me this in school. So that's where I got to Think and Grow Rich, and also Robert Kiyosaki. That's what led to entrepreneurship. I'm sure we'll get to that. So was it something before that? Again, that was around 2001, 2002. I would say before that, my favorite book is Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power. I found that one probably around 1999, maybe 2000. But I've always been a big reader. So my mom is an educator. So she would go to the bookstore to look for early education books. And I would go to the sports section and the human psychology section, which they now call personal development. But I don't know if there was any one particular book, but I used to read anything I can get my hands on, magazines, books, all kinds of things. But was there one switch that flipped? I don't think so. I think it was just, and it was interesting that you asked that, because that one switch that flipped, I analogize that to, you asked me earlier about my audience online, and I've never gone viral. I put out probably 30,000 pieces of content. I put out more original content than any human on the planet in the last 20 years, but I've never gone viral. I've never had a piece of content. I put it out today and I wake up 2 days later and there's 1 million views. Never had it happen. But as I just kept plugging away over time, eventually when you step back and look at the big picture, you're like, oh, this person, okay, this is something. There's some significance here. It's the exact same thing when it comes to the mindset. There was no one thing that automatically just did it for me. Like, Michael Jordan talks about when he made that game-winning shot against Georgetown in his freshman year. Then after that, he just became this monster. And he can point to that one moment. I don't have that one moment. I can't tell you there was any one. It was just a continually, just every day showing up, doing the job. Kind of like I say every day on my show. Show up day to day to do the work. Eventually, you turn around and look at it and you say, oh, okay, this is something. It's kind of like Steve Jobs when he gave that famous commencement speech at Stanford, that you can't put the puzzle together looking forward. You got to look backwards. You only see it after you look back and you realize, oh, all those things mattered for a reason. And that's the best answer I can give you to that.
That's a fantastic answer. Thank you. So your mom was an educator. What did your dad do?
My dad had his full-time job was basically manual labor factory work, but he's also a musician, avid musician. So he would do his music gigs at night. And my dad would sleep like 4 or 5 hours a night, probably for 30 years.
Wow.
And again, so when I say show up every day and do the work, and they never talked about it, never bragged about it, that's where I got it from.
Yeah, you had two remarkable models. So you had a mom that was an educator and taught you, you can find education through books. And then you had a father who was a performer who taught you show up every night and perform. And it's interesting. I mean, you're a fascinating guy. And I've listened to a lot of your podcasts and a lot of your content. So you're a fascinating guy. So thank you. Thanks for going there with me. And thanks for being vulnerable and kind of exploring it. I really appreciate it. If there was one thing that as our audience listens, and I'm really, I figure there's two types of people listening to today's episode. One is somebody who's kind of down, like this is a bad day. And our podcast usually comes out on Monday. It's like a bad day. Like they're getting up this morning and going, my God, what am I doing here? And then there's another person who's listening to this who's on a roll and they want to keep the roll going. Like they're trying to find how to keep momentum going. They don't want to lose the momentum. What advice would you give these two people? What would be the common thread that you would recommend to them based on your experience from your work on your game principles? What would you say?
Number one, as a professional and also as a competitor, is that your worst day needs to be better than your opposition's best day. Is that and the way you do that is by setting your standard to a point that your normal mode of operation is a higher level than what the average person even thinks is possible for them. And that's all about setting the baseline. So if you're tired, you still get up and you're still the first one at the office, or you get to the gym and get your workout in, or whatever your routine is, whatever your processes you need to follow is doing that. And as far as momentum, take advantage of it. When your energy is high and that momentum is flowing, take advantage of it and get everything done that's supposed to be done. And I tell people there are 3 levels of speed. There's tactical speed, which is simply just moving faster on a conscious level. There is strategic speed, which is changing your plan of action, still looking at the same goal, but just changing the process by which you're going to get to it. For example, drive to the gym instead of walking to the gym, you'll probably get there faster. And then there's wholesale speed, which is you may even change the goal. So if the goal is to get rich, maybe you were trying to get rich through this business, but now you're going to shut that business down and get into a different one because it has more income potential. So there's tactical, strategic, and wholesale speed. And when you have momentum, you want to be looking at your situation, asking yourself, strategically, is this going to get me where I want to go by the time I want to get there? Do I need to make a strategic change? Do I need to make a wholesale change? Usually is one of those two. Tactical speed can help in the short term, but in the big picture of life, it's one of those two speeds that usually needs to change. And sometimes we do need that change. Sometimes we just gotta suck it up and deal with it and eat the. I don't know if you all use profanity on the show, so I tell people that you have to decide what flavor of poop sandwich would you like to eat, because everybody has to eat one, and no matter what you do, you have to eat one. You have a house, you got to do the landscaping. You rent somewhere, then you got to listen to what the landlord says. If you have a car, you got to get the car fixed. You have kids, then they're going to sometimes get on your nerves and wake you up in the middle of the night. No matter what you do, there's a trade-off, and that's the third law of economics, is the opportunity cost. What I tell people, no such thing as a free lunch. All right, so anything you get in life has to be paid for one way or another, whether you know about it or not. It's best that you know about it so that at least you know what you're signing up for.
That's perfect. So one of the things I argue with our lawyers about, and I should say argue, but I have to point out to them, you don't get a great practice or a great life for free. It's an earned experience. You don't get it. Like, there's no government number to call for 1-800-GREAT-LIFE. You have to get up. And sometimes you get the sandwich that you don't want, right? And other times you just get up. And so for you, you're going to tell both people, get up, do your thing. And if you got the momentum, you've got the 3 types of momentum that you've talked about. Let's go back to the person who's struggling. That's a rough day for them. What would you say?
Person who's having that rough day is oftentimes you just need to keep going. And what I tell people is everybody in life has a story. And ever since I've been in the professional speaking space, maybe you have people in the legal space who maybe come to you with the same question. They'll say, hey, Dre, I see you, did a TED Talk, or you do some speech, some public speech somewhere. They'll say, I want to get into speaking, Dre. And I'll ask them, what do you want to speak about? Why do you want to get into speaking? Often their answer is, I have a story. I've been through this. I've been through that. That's often the answer I get from people. I have a story. Thing is, every human being on the planet has a story. Even the person living under the overpass, getting off the highway, they have a story too. Everybody has a story. The problem is not everybody's story will draw an audience of people who want to hear it. And what makes your story worth listening to is not that you have one, but it's the fact that you went through the rough stuff and you kept going to the point that you can stand on a stage or in front of a camera and you can say to the audience, I've been where you are and I made it through to get to this stage. Let me tell you how I did it. But if you're a person who goes through the rough stuff, and you don't make it through and you quit, then you still have a story. It's just nobody wants to hear it. So if you want to be able to tell your story, you have to be resilient enough to get through the challenging part so that you can make it to the part where you can look back and tell everybody, I did it. Let me tell you how it goes. And the thing is, in general, Steve, most people just quit. And on anything. I've known people who quit when things were working because it just got boring to them. I know people who quit when things are not working. And just harking back to my background as an athlete, I was not the most talented athlete. Again, if I had been talented, I would have been at a Division I school instead of a Division III school. And I saw a lot of athletes who had more talent than me from my neighborhood, players I played with and against in college. And the reason why I was able to make it is because I just kept going at the points that many of them fell off. They just either didn't want to keep working on their game. They were in college and they didn't go to class, so they end up being ineligible. They made some mistake off the court, or they just didn't want to go through the grind and the hustle of trying to get into pro after we got out of college, because none of us had anybody waving a contract in our face from that level. We had to go and hustle in order to make the opportunity happen. And again, I've seen people quit even when things were going pretty well. It's just people get bored with the grind of just showing up every single day and doing the job. And is it monotonous? Yes, it is. Can it be boring at times? Yes, it is. Is it the same things over and over again? Yes, that's the job. That's what makes it a job, is the fact that it's not always fun. Because if it was always fun, it wouldn't be a job. All right? It would be an amusement park. All right? That's the amusement park as far as things to always be fun. What makes it a job is that you get bored and that it's monotonous and it's the same stuff over and over again. And it can put you to sleep when you have to do the same things every single day. And that's what separates the pros from the amateurs, is showing up every single day and delivering, even when there's no excitement kind of behind the showing up. There's nothing exciting about today, but I still have to show up and do my job. And if, as you keep doing that, eventually you build up the momentum without even thinking about it, that eventually leads to the success.
That's brilliant. Perfect. Beautiful. So Dre, I want to talk to you for a minute about how you've made a career out of creating content out of your own transmutation. So as I listen to you, I realize that you've done two things very brilliantly. One is you show up and you work on your game. You show up even when you're bored and you do work. And like you said, you haven't like tripped over something viral. You just show up every day and do the hard work. The second thing I'm pretty clear about is as a lifelong learner, you pay close attention to your own lessons. And you've written 35 books, which we'll put in the show notes. We'll put everything about you in the show notes. You've hosted 3,400 podcasts. Is that accurate?
Close enough.
You're close enough?
Yeah.
And you've got this claim of producing more content than anyone alive, which is a very, very bold claim to make. But in there, I think my guess is that you're paying close attention to your transmutation lessons and talking about them and sharing them and encouraging others with those lessons. Everything from your books to your podcasts are your observations about life and your encouragement, and sometimes your authentic, brutal, tough talk of get up and go do your job. That's sometimes what you got to do. Sometimes you got to, eat the poop sandwich, but get up and go. So is that fair? Is that a fair feedback?
Yes. And I mentioned Robert Greene, my favorite author. One thing I heard him say years ago, he said, everything is material. Because for people who know, have you read Robert Greene?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so one of the things that he talked about in writing that book, what his background was, he was in his late 30s when he wrote that book. That was his first book. And he had all these jobs and none of them had really worked out. And he thought his family was looking at him like, this guy's going to be a failure. He hasn't really found his place, his calling in life. And he was talking to the guy who ended up being the publisher of the book. And the guy was asking him, hey, would you happen to have any ideas for a book? And Robert said, actually, I do. And the book will be about, and this is him explaining to Juiced Elfers, who's the publisher of his first book. And he was saying to him, hey, it'll be about all the different power games people play, because he had been in Hollywood. He had been in all these industries. People play all these different power games and mind games and manipulations. And these are all things he had gone through in his own life. The book is based on things he actually experienced and saw in his life. That's how he came up with the 48 Laws. And one of the things that he said during the interview was that he comes up with his books because every single thing he experiences eventually becomes part of his content. And it's the exact same thing for me. So when I saw the internet in 2000, somewhere around 2000, this is back when we had the desktop computers. And I always tell people, Steve, that we still have desktop computers, but my computer was so slow that in college, I would type in ESPN.com, then I would go take a nap. And then hopefully when I woke up, the website was open on my computer. And back then, when I saw the internet and I saw early days, you had Yahoo GeoCities and you had this website called MySpace and you had AOL Instant Messenger, these early versions of make your own material. As soon as I saw that, I knew it was for me. I knew I would eventually be involved in some way, shape, or form. I didn't know how. No one knew social media was coming. We didn't know Instagram was coming. But I knew I was going to somehow, some way get involved because I knew that I had ways of looking at life that were different from the people around me. Now, I didn't know what the wider world thought about that, but I figured from this sample size that I have, there's no way that there's a whole bunch of people outside of this world. I knew a good number of people. And I think my way of looking at things is pretty unique. And I just wanted to put it out to the world. So social media, again, was a perfect platform for someone like myself. And when it comes to the content, I just created a system and a process out of it. It was the same thing with basketball that I just came up. Every time I had one idea, I would come up with another idea. Then I would read the comments and someone would say something. I say, okay, they have a question. They don't even know they have a question. I'll answer that with my next piece of content. And then I would take idea number 3 and idea number 12, put them together. And now I have idea number 25. And I would just keep creating. They would just keep building on itself. So it becomes like this self-sustaining cycle. And everything that I experience in life can possibly become content. I mean, just the other day, as a matter of fact, I was going through my spam folder and someone had replied to an email of mine like 3 weeks ago and didn't like what I wrote in the email. And he wrote something back. And instead of writing that one guy back, and this is the way that I look at things, one person says something to me in an email or DM or even in everyday life, instead of just responding to that one person, I said, why not just tell my whole audience what happened and respond to that person in front of everybody? Because now it becomes content and everyone can hear my response to something like that. Because I'm sure this one guy emailing me is not the only person who has that thought. So let me respond to everybody all at the same time. And now even people who weren't thinking that, they can see how I handle someone like that. And the people who like it are going to like me more. And the people who don't like it, they will like me less. And that's completely fine. So what I do is basically take everything that I experience and I put it out to the whole world so everybody can experience what I'm seeing and what I'm saying and see how I respond to things. And I've found over the years, there's an audience of people who like to hear someone who's able to explain it in this way. I don't think I'm the only one thinking it. I think I have the combination of, three things specifically. Is one, the fact that I think this way is one thing. Two is my ability to articulate and explain it. And three, my willingness to talk about it in public. Those three things combined is what creates the special sauce, so to speak.
I think there's a number 4. Number 4 is that you've inherited your father's performer capabilities. You by nature are a performer. And it's by nature, that's who you are. You go on stage and you perform. As your prolific amount of podcasts and all the things that you do, you're performing. I think the thing that's fascinating that I hope everybody hears is that you're present and paying attention all the time to what's happening, and you're looking for things to transform, transmute, and have conversations with people about, with your audience about. So you know, whereas I'm doing an interview of you, most of your podcasts are solo, right? I don't think I've seen you on other podcasts, but I haven't seen you have anybody as a guest on your episode, right?
I've had a couple, but maybe 5 in 10 years.
Yeah, just a few. So, you know, and I don't recall any of them. So I think that's one of the things that you do very, very, very well. But let me do a couple things, and then I know you got a busy schedule, so I don't want to overstay our welcome with you. How can people get more information about you?
Well, it depends on their preferred method. So I am, as you mentioned, I have a show that comes out every day. It's called Work on Your Game. They can find that on all your favorite audio platforms, Spotify, Apple, etc. We also put the video out on YouTube, but just me sitting here like this, so you don't need to look at me. You can just listen. I'm on all the social medias, so whichever platform you prefer, just go to that one, look my name up. Names are different on each platform, so just look me up. You can find it. And I got a lot of other things. I don't know how many things I want to give people. I tend to find, Steve, you give people too many things, they forget all of them. So I want to give people too much information.
So we'll put some things in the show notes. We'll put your, obviously, workonyourgame.com in the show notes, and then you'll give us a couple social profiles we'll put on it. I'd like you to I'd like to talk about 2 more things before we wrap up. One, I'd like you to give a preview to our audience about what the third day is about and why they should listen to you when you speak at the summit. Like what is the message that you'll have that will help them have a greater practice, you know, or a greater life? What's the message? Like and I don't want to give away too much, but if you could give a sense of highlighting what that presentation's about.
At the summit, I'm going to be giving a keynote speech called Work on Your Game, applying a pro athlete mindset at business, work, and life. And one of the pieces from my experience whenever I talk about this subject is people tend to catch on to and remember this concept of the third day, which would be one of the points that I talk about. And just to give you a simple example, I tell people, think of anything new that you voluntarily start doing. First day, you feel really excited because it's the first time doing it. Second day, still excited, maybe a little slightly less, but still pretty excited. And then by the third day, you realize that this thing you signed up for is going to be some work. All right, starting this business is not going to be as easy as I thought. Having this kid is not going to be as simple as it looked in the pictures. All right, there's some actual work that goes into this. And the third day is all about not the experience itself, because everyone experiences the third day, Steve. Even if you've been doing something for 1,000 days, you sometimes experience a third day. The third day is about the decision that you make when you experience it as to what am I going to do here? Am I going to show up all the way, even though I don't feel like showing up, or am I going to kind of half-ass it or mail it in, as we say, and not really give my best effort? And the third day is what separates the pros from the amateurs, because a professional has to show up every single time, because by definition, as a professional, you're getting paid to do what you do. And when someone's paying you, they expect you to show up. Now, when you're an amateur, you don't have to show up because nobody's paying you. So if you don't show up, nobody can complain because you don't owe them anything. But as a pro, you have to show up over and over again. And if you want to be a pro, you have to deal with the third day, and you just have to have a tool for handling it. So it's not even so much, something that I've learned over the years, Steve, is that when you put a label on something, it makes it much easier for people to deal with it when there's a label on it. So when I explain the concept of the third day, people say, okay, I have experienced that before, but I didn't know there was a word for it. So now that I know that there's a thing called the third day, it's much easier to handle this feeling because now I can call it something. It's kind of like back in the days when there would be thunder and lightning, people didn't know what it was. So they thought God was mad at them. But now that they know what it is, now it kind of makes more sense. So putting that label on it of the third day, I'm going to be explaining that at the summit. It'll help every professional in that room, and I'm assuming it's going to be a room full of professionals, to deal with the challenging days, the long days, the boring days, and sometimes more than a day. You have a third day for a month. You have a third day for a year straight. It's how do you continue to deal with it and continue doing your job as a professional, because that is your job as a professional.
I love it. I love it. There's so many times I've had conversations with young lawyers that work for me, or paralegals or legal assistants that came in with some type of crisis or some type of drama. And I'm like, I appreciate it. I express empathy, understand, sympathize. And I said, but you're a pro. You have to go to work today. And our clients don't care. The judge doesn't care. No one cares that you're dealing with this crisis. So you have to go to work and be a professional and look out for the client. You have to go to work, regardless how you feel, and go to work and take care of your client. That's what you're committed to. That's what your oath as a professional is. And sometimes it's tough. And that's really, really a difficult thing for people to hear, that, yeah, I appreciate what's going on, but you don't get a pass on this. You're a professional. This is what you signed up for. Go do your job. And that's not a pleasant talk to have with somebody. It's not a pleasant talk to hear from, either your partner or your colleague, to say, yeah, I got it, but go to work. And that's a difficult thing. So I think you really hit a big message there, a really great message, a really terrific way of thinking about that message. Okay, here's another question for you. What's the one thing that Dre Baldwin has learned about himself showing up every day?
One thing I learned about myself from showing up every day is how few people show up every day. And if you want to separate yourself from the masses, all you had to do, Earl Nightingale said this in his tape called Lead the Field. He said, if you get into a space and you want to separate yourself from everyone else, just look around at what everybody else is doing and do the opposite of that. And most people just don't show up every day. I mean, I go to a gym. There's certain days I go to the gym at the same time, and there are some days right after Christmas, Fridays, when the weather is nice, and half the people that are normally there, they ain't there. All right, where's everybody at? Where are you? Where's everybody? Where'd everybody go? All right, and people just don't show up. And just consistently showing up is, if I had to take one through line of everything that we talked about and everything that I've done, let's just say from college graduation to now, which has been about 20 years, it's just showing up more consistently than everybody else. That's it. The number one thing that I would say has put me in this position that I'm in now is just showing up every single day when other people eventually just stop showing up. It's just I'm a distance runner. I'm not a sprinter. And when you're in a distance race, yes, you need speed at certain points, but the most important thing you need is endurance. You just have to keep going. Can you just take one more step? And that's been the major through line of my professional life from, again, graduation 2004 to now, is just continually showing up. That's what's made me who I am.
That's absolutely perfect. So I want to thank you for showing up today. I want to thank you for showing up at the summit in advance to help my friends, my colleagues, my brothers and sisters of the bar to really develop resilience so they can work on their game. And thanks for being here today, Dre. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, Steve, I appreciate you opening your audience to me, and not only here, but also looking forward to it at the summit. And also thank you for the great questions, thoughtful questions, and looking forward to hearing how your audience responds to this conversation.
Thank you, Dre. Thanks for joining this week's episode of Great Practice, Great Life. Please tune in weekly to get the next episode. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, like, and don't hesitate to share it with a friend who you think this episode could help. With that, thanks, and I hope you enjoy next week's episode.